Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Casey Gilboy podcast, where I say, let's talk about anything. I started a new series called Casey and Friends, where I interview people I know who have experience and knowledge in many areas of life. So today I'm interviewing my friend, KatyBeth Robertson, who is an amazing woman of God. She and her husband served on staff for several years at our church here in Utah and became our dear friends. God called them back to Kentucky to be near family, and we've stayed in contact, and I'm so thankful for her friendship. KatyBeth has served in ministry with her husband Nick for many years. She is a hardworking manager at her company and is raising one amazing kiddo. When we went to see her baby girl in the hospital many years ago when she was first born, my husband finally agreed that we could have our fourth child. So thank you, KatyBeth, for giving my husband baby fever one last time. I'm so excited for all you listeners to join us on this conversation today and glean insight and encouragement from KatyBeth on this extremely important and relevant topic of, drumroll please, marriage. So thank you, KatyBeth, for being on the podcast today. Could you tell us a bit more about yourself, your family, and just share what led up to your journey through marriage struggles?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. And as Casey mentioned, it's me and my husband and our little girl. She's 6, Riley. Nick and I got married about 2012, and we grew up in a very small town in the Midwest, Quincy, Illinois, and we lived there for probably our first year of marriage, which for us was great. I traveled for work, and Nick worked at a small news station, and we got to see each other when I was home from traveling. So we made it a priority to like spend time together. And then about a year into our marriage, we moved to Utah to be closer to friends and started going to Canyon Road Church in Utah. And we moved out there to be closer to friends and help in ministry. And while we were there, we had a lot of growing. And we became pregnant with our first child in 2014. And our first child was supposed to be delivered in 2015. And so we experienced a miscarriage. And then in 2000 and about 17, we started going through some church struggles. And both of those instances just really amplified some of our communication issues. And so we sought wisdom and counsel from friends, trusted friends, family. And it was actually my parents who had suggested looking locally for a Christian counselor. And so we started looking, and we found a wonderful Christian counselor who really, I feel like the Lord chose for us. His name was Steve, and he was a worship pastor, and also was on the worship team when we started seeing him. So he really understood Nick. He was also married, and had a wife with similar personality to mine. And so it worked really well. In meeting with him, we both felt really comfortable. We were even able to bring Riley after we had her. And a lot of what we talked about in counseling was communication and how we needed to communicate better. Um, so that's kind of what led up to our journey through our marriage struggles.
Hmm. Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing you were able to bring her. I never knew
Yeah.
that.
Yes. We got to take her in, and I remember sitting her in her little carrier. And Steve would even like pray over her with us. It was so cool. And she was so good. Like, I don't, she maybe fussed a little bit, but she was great for the full like hour that we were with him.
Wow, I just think
Yeah.
that fact that you said that will be really encouraging to some people listening here because some people have babies and they can't leave them at home like an older kid, and to know that maybe counselors would let you bring your kid in would
Yeah,
help in those early months when you are postpartum and having new issues. And I've had a lot of mothers say, I don't know what to do with the baby. So you're saying maybe even just ask and see if your counselor will let you bring the baby, right?
absolutely. And ours actually gave us the invitation. Um, when we were going through kind of um our church stuff, some of our friend group that we depended on like to help us because we didn't have family in Utah, um, maybe wasn't either able to watch Riley during the day when we went, or initially we didn't have daycare for her. And our lovely Laura that used to help us with childcare had school during the day too. So there were a lot of times when we like couldn't make the times that Steve would set if we didn't have childcare. And he was like, just bring her with. I'm happy to have her. So sometimes counselors will even give that invitation. But if they don't, I would definitely ask if it's an option, especially if you're seeing like a smaller clinic that has counselors who like ours were he was working through his license, so he was an intern with the counseling um, place that we went to, and he was a lot more flexible with things, it felt like too. So always ask would be my recommendation.
Wow, that's incredible. I learn something new every time I do this with my friends. Just new things pop up, and I'm just so excited to like shine a light on that. Thank you so much. All right,
Yeah,
my next question is, what has your journey been like since you did start that marriage counseling?
yeah. Um, so won't lie, our journey has not been perfect and all of our problems are not fixed. And we still have to practice a lot of the things that we learned in counseling. Um, even today, like I was telling you earlier. um, there are situations where either Nick or myself are like, no, I know that I need to do it this way, and this is how it needs to be done. And Nick and I are both very strong-willed people. And so we can butt heads a lot when we think we know what what's what. And today I could tell Nick was really wanting to help with my setup for the podcast. You know how to do it. He's a sound guy and he's like, I can make this like perfect. And I'm like, I just need to operate the computer. And so we had a moment where he was like, can you come here, please? And was very respectful about it. He was like, just let me set this up for you. And I politely was like, I really appreciate this, but I am not tech savvy like you. I just need to be able to use the computer. And he's like, okay, then I'm going to write my password down here. You can just log on. WebEx is up and ready, and you can do whatever you're comfortable with. And that wouldn't have happened when we started counseling. I think a lot of what we worked through was we both wanted to be heard, and we wanted like our thing to be heard, and feel valued and feel seen. And what Steve really worked through with us was the communication piece of when you listen and you work through things together, and don't try and talk over each other or say my opinion is more important, you're able to communicate more effectively. Um, so now um, we try to practice that and everything. It's never perfect. And sometimes we have to go back and be like, I communicated this incorrectly, or I could tell you were having a really bad day and bringing this up at that time probably wasn't the best idea. And so I feel like we communicate much better, a lot more healthy. And we also try to work together as a team. And I think those have been like the biggest part of our journey is just operating like a team and making decisions together, and making sure we're constantly communicating so the other one doesn't feel left out.
Mm, I love that. That's so beautiful. Could you give me an example, just for people listening here? How
Yeah,
would your situation today gone differently way before you had marriage counseling, just so they can see the healthy version, unhealthy version of that?
yeah, absolutely. Um, I would have been really frustrated after a long day of like I had a lot of tech stuff today at work that I didn't understand, and Nick doesn't know that. But I knew that. And so I probably would have been really snippy and been like, I don't want to do that. And Nick would have been like, well, I know what I'm doing. I'm a tech guy. Like, if you just do what I say, then it will go fine. And it would have been very like fighty towards each other, trying to prove our points, me trying to make him hear me when he doesn't understand my situation, and then him trying to say, no, I'm helping you by, doing this, instead of us just communicating clearly of like, this is what I can mentally handle today and this is what I'm capable of. And I really appreciate you stepping up and helping. But prior to counseling, it would have been I need you to hear me because I had a bad day with tech. Well, I need you to hear me because I'm better with tech and I understand what I'm doing. If you just let me set it up, it'll be super easy for you. And not really coming together and communicating just more kindly and more clearly.
Oh, wow. I think a lot of people will resonate with this because these are real life issues that we face day to day. And you add a child into the mix, and you're tired already from your work day, and then your child needs you. And then we feel the most safe with our spouse, so we tend to treat them worse. But I love that you talked a lot about we're a team and speak kindly. Do you have any advice on that when, if say like you and Nick both had really bad days today and you were worried that you might snip at him or yell at him or say something you regret, what do you do in that moment to check yourself, and advice for someone who might want to see what you do in that moment?
Yeah. So today, um, earlier in the day, when I was feeling overwhelmed to work, so Nick and I both work at home. My office is over here and his is here. So we do have that advantage. We're not just connecting right when we come in the door. Um, but I came in like midday, and it was like, hey, I'm experiencing this at work. This is really difficult for me. I'm getting frustrated. Like, if I am snippy, please let me know. I don't intend to be. I'm just really overwhelmed and really frustrated. Um, and I tried to like give him that circumstance. So one, if I was being snippy, he could tell me if I didn't realize it, but two, he could kind of understand where I was coming from. And he was a lot more patient with me this afternoon. And um, that helped a lot. And I think also just communication up until that point of knowing, like, okay, KatyBeth is overwhelmed. I know what I'm doing. I know I can make this really easy for her. But if she doesn't want to do that right now, I need to not push it. And then vice versa for me, like, I need to hear him out instead of just shutting him down. Of like, okay, I understand. You know what you're doing. Like, I downloaded an app to try to like do an external camera and like tried headphone things. And so I think giving each other's way a try, instead of just like automatically shutting each other down, um, if that helps someone.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
that was great. Now, can you give us some examples of things you had to work through being new parents versus not having a child, and what element did that bring to marriage counseling and more issues you had to work through?
Yeah. So, one thing our counselor said to us right off the bat, we started seeing our counselor when we were pregnant with Riley. So, we had just found out. And he was like, you already have some of these underlying issues, and adding a child into that is going to add or amplify some of these. And he was right, it did. Um, and I would say probably the um, some of the ones I remember the most were um, boundaries, and like me not taking on like the full weight of like having a newborn at home and being on maternity leave. But like, just because I was on maternity leave and had a newborn at home didn't mean I could do it all by myself. Um, and so learning to tell Nick when I needed help was a big thing for me. Um, and then also, as a new mom, you have tons of hormones that you're leveling out and things like that. And I was mean sometimes, and I was also dealing with like postpartum depression, and I didn't know right away. And so having to having Nick having to navigate my like outbursts and emotions and anxiety um was a lot on top of what we were already going through. And so we would work through a lot of that when we went to go meet with Steve, and he would give us really concrete plans to work through. And that was really helpful. We would put them on our fridge, and then we would go to the fridge and we would follow the communication plan that he gave us because we couldn't remember to do it on our own.
Mm-hmm.
Um, being new parents, being so tired. Um, so boundaries was a big one. Just setting boundaries with each other of like, this is what I mentally can handle right now. Um, and like trading off. So, one of the big things I think for Nick was going back to church. And I was like, I'm so tired. I'm still healing. I don't know if I can. And he was like, I would really like to go back. How about we just go sit for a Sunday? He's like, you don't have to do anything else. This is all you have to do. Just go sit. And that was like such a blessing. There was a lady that we went to church with, and she was like, I'll hold Riley for you. And sat in front of us and like held Riley for a minute. And I didn't like know how much I needed that. And so like Nick could kind of tell I needed to like go out more. And so not just setting boundaries around like this is my boundary of like what I can handle, but also like, hey, we're gonna go do this, but you need to tell me when enough is enough. And so um again, I think boundaries were like the biggest thing for us as new parents working through all of our marriage stuff. And then also like literally taping the sheets to the fridge and just working through the communication plan that our counselor gave us.
Wow. And what I'm hearing from you is that you are both very teachable and humble and can receive instruction. Do you find that's hard for some people because of pride and ego to accept that intervention? And also, what advice do you have for people who do feel that pride and ego and they don't want to go to a counselor and have them give them a list of what to do? What would your advice be for that?
Yeah. Um that's hard. We had a lot of pride and ego going into counseling, still do sometimes.
We all do.
But yeah. um I know this sounds cliche, but prayer. Um Even if like your spouse isn't um a follower of Christ or doesn't believe in the Lord, um prayer would be one of the biggest things that I would recommend. As far as communication, um there are a lot of great um resources that I found on Instagram from like licensed therapists. If you can't afford to go to a therapist or like your spouse won't go with you, you can utilize those. The other thing I would recommend is individual therapy.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
and Nick and I still continued with individual therapy after marriage counseling, and would even do check-ins with our marriage counselor. But that individual therapy allowed us to check ourselves individually, um, and then also take things back and find a counselor who doesn't just make you comfortable but is honest with you.
Mm.
Who checks your ego. That was something that I very much appreciated. One about our marriage counselor because he would call us both out on things.
Mm.
Um, but my individual counselor was also similar, and she would do a great job of being like, "Can I offer you some feedback?" Um, and that might be a good way um, to offer your spouse feedback of, you know, maybe pick a time when things aren't so heated, um, and then sit down and say, hey, can I talk to you about something that really bothered me? And Nick and I do that. We do check-ins, um, and see how receptive they are to talking about it, and then maybe try, can I offer you some feedback? Like this really hurt me. Can I offer you some feedback of like what would help me next time, and maybe approach it from that side of things.
I love that. Sounds like you've got your own little counseling center going on here on Zoom already.
Right?
Uh, what advice do you have for people who are at this point where they're like, okay, something's wrong, we need help. How do I even look for a counselor? People who are Christians and non-Christians, what advice would you give them?
Yeah. So a few things that I would recommend is one, check with your employer. A lot of employers have started offering benefits where you get so many free sessions of counseling or therapy through a partner that they have. So my employer offers one through a program called Spring Health. Um, Also, check your insurance. A lot of insurance companies will have counseling or therapists listed on there that you can just go find like you would a doctor. Um, and then I can tell you looking for a Christian therapist in Utah versus you looking for a Christian therapist in Kentucky is very different. Utah was super easy. It had like two places, and we found our place and went there, and it was very small, and we loved it. Here, you Google it, and there's like hundreds of
Wow.
Christian counseling places. And I would also look into different therapy methods that you feel would work best for you. So, um, Nick and I did more like talk therapy when we did marriage counseling and did like competence or competency. Sorry, we did CBT, so cognitive based therapy, which is like talk based. Something that worked well for me individually was called internal family systems, and it helped me to realize where my emotions were coming from. And so, if you're someone who has had trauma or has a hard time identifying why you're getting frustrated or anxious or angry, you don't understand your emotions, that might be something really good to work through with your spouse in therapy too. So, definitely like research your options and see what are out there. And again, um, Instagram has a ton of great licensed therapists that are on there too that you can search that can kind of get you started with that.
I love that you mentioned that because that is such a fabulous free resource. I follow tons of different counselors and therapists. Some aren't even Christian, but they give such little nuggets of wisdom. And it's social media style. It's on your feed. So it's going to be just a picture with maybe, some quotes on it, a couple slides of that, and then just a caption. But it's like a little mini therapy session you get, and you can chew on that for a while. And I didn't even think about sharing that. So thank you so much. That's amazing insight. I love
Yeah,
that.
and you share a ton of great like therapy like posts and people on your page too. So um I know I find a lot through you as well.
That's a great idea. Maybe in the show notes, I'll post some of the therapists I follow, and if you recommend any too, send them
Yeah,
my way, and then we can send people straight there so they have a resource immediately after watching this.
yeah, absolutely. I can do that.
Well, awesome. I'm sure we could talk about this for hours, maybe another podcast. We will. You have so much knowledge and wisdom in so many areas that I feel like I could interview you like 30 more times and we'd still barely scratch the surface of what you have to offer the world. But before we go, I just have one last question, something a little more lighthearted and a way to end the podcast on a fun note. So, what is your favorite memory of us together?
Ah, that's so hard. I have so many. Um, I would say, um, probably one of my best ones is because I remember it so vividly and it like meant so much, but it was also really fun, is when you came to my baby shower for Riley. Um, I just remember you and you're like, hey, I know you don't know me, but I'm the pastor's wife at Canyon Road. Thanks for letting me come to your baby shower. And I was like, oh my gosh, she is like so fun. I am so like happy she came to my baby shower. And I felt like instantly comfortable with you. So I'd say that's probably one of my most fun memories with you. Um, if you ask me another one in another podcast, I'll have more to share. But
Oh,
I would say
okay.
that's
We'll
probably
share them
top of mind.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a risk, everyone. Going to a baby shower for someone you've never met before, you better make sure you've talked to God about that one, just in case, because that's a little risky to show
It,
up.
it was great though. It got me a really, really great friend.
Oh, thank you. I love that memory of us too. I just have so many amazing memories with you, and you've given me so much insight in life. And that's why I love this new podcast series because you've been through different things that I've been through. And so if I can interview you, you can give insight in ways that I never would have thought of. And I feel like then we can spread the knowledge throughout the world. And it's just a click away. If someone says, oh, hey, you're having trouble, with your marriage or finding a counselor, check out this really quick podcast and you can learn so much in 20 minutes. And this is kind of a microwave society. We don't want to watch the whole movie. We just want an episode here or there. So this short podcast, even though we're barely scratching the surface with all your knowledge, I think it gives people a taste of the insight you have to offer. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today, KatyBeth. And it would mean so much to me if all of you listeners could share, subscribe, and tune in to the podcast for more episodes. If you subscribe, you'll be alerted to when new episodes are posted. And if you share, the word gets out and more people are helped. And that's all I care about with this podcast, just to share knowledge to help people who are struggling, who feel alone and feel like there's nobody there for them. And this is a way for you to feel like someone cares about you and someone has been through what you've gone through. And we're here to walk you through it. You're not alone and God is always with you. Thank you all for hanging out with us today on the podcast and have a great week, all of you beautiful people. Goodbye.